Says that people are waiting. Let's see. We're good? Let's see here. Because I'm not seeing myself. Here we go. Welcome into Philadelphia 76ers Now live here on Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr. The drama never stops with this basketball team, and we're here to talk about it right here on the show. As James Harden, during an event in China in which he was doing a Q&A with the audience members who were there, called Daryl Morey, the guy who's been his biggest advocate, his biggest fan, a liar, and said that he never wants to play for Daryl Morey again. Now, with this James Harden situation, this is something that we've been talking about since the lead up to NBA free agency. When he opted into his contract, the expectation was that he was going to demand a trade from the Sixers. He did that. The Sixers obviously have not dealt him yet, and now we're at this standstill, and it looks as though this battle is going to be ongoing for a long period of time. A lot of people are starting to get that notification, and they're piling into the show no matter where you are or how you're tuned in. We appreciate you for making 76ers Now a part of your day. Our poll question for today, and the question that we're going to continue to go back to, whose side are you on here? Is it James Harden type JH? Is it Daryl Morey type DM? Let me know right now down in the comment section here, because I want to see where the fans are at. This is also our live poll question here. 71% of the votes going with Daryl Morey, 29% with James Harden here. Random is saying hello. Mind My Business Ron is saying the drama hour. Dark Armies is saying yo. Sid Joel Smith saying yo. Now we have a couple of votes coming in. Dark Armies, James Harden, random going James Harden as well. For all of you who continue to pile in, make sure you hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. As for what exactly James Harden said about the Sixers basketball executive here, Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of. Let me say that again. So he doubled down here. Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of. These are strong words from James Harden. Clearly, he is upset. He is disgruntled, and he feels as though he has been lied to by Daryl Morey. And keep in mind, Morey traded for James Harden when Harden was with the Oklahoma City Thunder as a six-man. A couple of years later, he made James Harden at the time the highest paid basketball player in the history of the NBA. Harden gets unhappy in Houston. He goes to the Brooklyn Nets. He wants to leave the Brooklyn Nets, and then he demands a trade. He wants to go to Philadelphia, and Daryl Morey rescues him, and now it looks as though they are at odds, and Harden is dissing him, bashing him, calling him a liar. For him to say that between two grown men, that is pretty notable right there. Now, I want to let you know that we are going to give you the best Sixers coverage here on YouTube all throughout the show. But also, just let me know where you're watching from and continue to get that comment section going here. We're emanating live from the Chat Sports studios here in Dallas, Texas. That's where our national sports network is located. Where are you? I want to see where people are at right now down in the chat. Kevo Bueno, get Harden the hell out of here. I agree. Fritz DeDon saying he wanted $1 billion. I highly doubt that, but he probably wanted a lot of money. So Joel Smith, Arkansas. But here's the deal with James Harden wanting a new contract. He wanted a contract extension. He wanted a max deal. No team out across the NBA wanted to give him that. And that's pretty telling. So that's why he opted into that deal with Philadelphia. He opts into that deal with Philadelphia, and now he's trying to demand a trade. A lot of it doesn't make a lot of sense. Kevo Bueno saying, listening from Jacksonville, Mind My Business Ron is in Washington, D.C. Now, if you follow James Harden's career, he's been a guy who has been unhappy a lot. He pouts, he has bad body language, and when he doesn't get his way, he demands out. And this is now the third team that he wants a trade from. So at what point are you going to look in the mirror and say, it's my fault. He pouted his way out of Houston. He got his wish to go to the Brooklyn Nets to play with Kevin Durant as well as Kyrie Irving. He demanded a trade from the Nets once that didn't work out. He wanted to go to the Sixers to team back up with Daryl Morey. So Daryl Morey trades Ben Simmons to bring in the Beard, a player who he's always loved. And he got what he wanted once again. But then when things started to go awry, James Harden took less money to go to the Sixers last year to return to try to chase a championship. He made it be known all throughout the year, and now those Woj reports about Harden testing free agency and thinking about leaving Philadelphia made a lot of sense because Harden let his unhappiness be known, and then he opts in because he couldn't get a deal anywhere else, and now he's trying to leverage the Sixers here. The player empowerment era across the NBA is very problematic, and of course, we're going to continue to discuss this all throughout the show. If you're coming in here for the first time, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're approaching 12,000 subscribers. It's been a slow portion on the NBA calendar, but with the 76ers, it is never slow. We're approaching 12,000 subs, as I said, so continue to lock us in and hit that subscribe button right now. I mentioned off the top of the show, like it never stops with this basketball team. And the 76ers dysfunction, it's lingered for my entire lifetime pretty much. I know there were a couple of great years with Allen Iverson, but other than that, some lean years. The process years were tough. And now Philadelphia's been top 3 in wins across the NBA since 2020, but they can't get out of their own way. And you look at the 76ers dysfunction here. In 2013, they traded Drew Holiday, an all-star point guard at the time, to tank. In 2014, they drafted 2 players who didn't play. In 2015, drafted a third straight center in Jahlil Okafor, who ended up being a massive bust. In 2016, they hired their advisor's son to run the team. And then Brian Colangelo is then caught with trashing Joel Embiid in 2018. In 2017, their number 1 pick in Markelle Fultz mysteriously couldn't shoot the basketball any longer. In 2019, they were on the right track. They went 7 games with the Toronto Raptors in the second round. Then they traded Jimmy Butler. In 2020, they fired their head coach. They hired a new head coach, and then they hired a general manager. Oftentimes, you hire your general manager first before then hiring the head coach. Not with Philadelphia. Then in 2021, Ben Simmons demands a trade. In 2022, the Sixers are investigated for tampering. And in 2023, another point guard is unhappy. This time, it is James Harden. Now, we have about 70 people watching live right now. As people continue to trickle in, please make sure you hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. More likes that we get, the more people who come hang out with us, the better the show will become. And if you want to get featured on the program today, use the hashtag Harden or Super Chat to get on the show. So if you have a question about James Harden, this situation, hashtag Harden. If you just want to bash the Beard, that's fine too. We'll put them up on screen. Hashtag Harden. Start to get those questions in right now because I do want to do a mailbag after we go in further detail about this current situation. And I want Sixers fans to react to this entire situation. So hashtag Harden to get featured here on the show. Of course, you can send in a super chat if you want to send in a donation. It's the rectangular box with a $sign through it. We appreciate your support. Other ways to support the show. Continue to hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. You can comment often, share this video on social media, subscribe to 76ers Now, but of course, send in a super chat too if you like what you're seeing to send us a tip. Are you ready to break this down in further detail? Because we're going to uncover and talk about this story really from every single element out there. If that's the case, make sure you hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. 70 people watching live. 20 likes right now. Can we get to 30 likes before we officially start the show? There's plenty of people in here in order to get to that number, so continue to hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. Fritz DeDon is saying, how about those Eagles? Yeah, I can't wait for the Eagles season. It feels as though the Sixers season is already over before it even started, and that's obviously really unfortunate. Mind my business, Ron, using that hashtag Harden. Martian Lynch, one of our real ones, please make sure you use the hashtag Harden to get featured here on the show because that's a good comment that you passed along. Michael Thomas is saying, it's tiring going through this crap almost every single year. Poor management is at its core with all of these problems. And here's what's unfortunate as well. You would think that Philadelphia has the ownership to get this right. Well, Joshua Harris is a busy guy. He owns the New Jersey Devils. He owns the Washington Commanders. He owns the Philadelphia 76ers. At some point, do you have too much going on to get this organization back on track right now? And that is what's frustrating. 5 likes away from 30, and then we'll start the show. 72 people watching live. 5 more likes, and then we'll officially get started here on the show. Tony Wiley, it's time for the Sixers to stop making all these over-the-top moves. And then he adds, on top of that, trust their organization from within. It's time for a retool. Miami showed you don't need superstars to win. You have a superstar in Joel Embiid. You have a guy who's capable of being a co-star in Tyrese Maxey. Can you win at a high level with those two players? At this point, James Harden is not going to net you any crazy deal. And he's a declining asset who's clearly disgruntled, doesn't want to return to the Sixers or play for Daryl Morey. Other teams know that now. So why would they give up so much for a player who they don't think is going to return to Philadelphia? So the Sixers are kind of backed into a corner here where they are in a very precarious spot. Kevo Bueno, I follow both the Sixers and Eagles now. How about a Phillies now? Maybe at some point in the future. I love talking baseball, actually. That was my first love. And I fell in love with sports broadcasting, listening to Harry Callis call games back in the day. So Phillies now would be cool. My plate is very full here at Chat Sports, though. So it's all about finding time in order to do that. Dave Coleman, Harden has nobody to blame but himself. Exactly. Martian Lynch, I don't know if God can save the Sixers. LOL. Continue to use hashtag Harden to get on the show. We're going to do a Sixers fans react to this type of segment after our first segment of the show. We're 1 like away from 30. All we need to do is get to 30 likes, and then we're starting the program. 81 people watching live, and then we'll fully dive into all of this. We need one more person to hit that thumbs up icon. Who's going to be a real one out there? Boom, 30 likes. You're a real one, whoever hit that thumbs up. Lion Fighter X, bye Felicia. Yeah, for real. Another reminder, we're going to talk about this James Harden situation, what he said, what it means, the implications that come along with this. After that, we're going to take all of your questions and your comments. Use the hashtag Harden to get featured here on the show. Continue to like the video, and the official show starts right now. More drama for the Philadelphia 76ers as this organization cannot get out of its own way. You're watching 76ers Now by Chat Sports. I'm Shea Sr. Appreciate all of you for being here with us. So much drama right now after James Harden at an event in China called Daryl Morey, quote, a liar, and said that he doesn't want to play for Daryl Morey again. This is wild, and we're going to break it down in full detail. Thanks for watching the show. So James Harden making these comments at an event in China. He was doing a Q&A with the audience members who were on hand. And when he was taking questions from people in attendance, he was asked about his current situation with the Sixers and Daryl Morey, and he doubled down on his comments that we're about to unveil here on the show. And this comes after a wild weekend of reports coming from some of the most notable NBA reporters who cover the sport. Adrian Wojnarowski said this on Saturday, that the 76ers had ended their trade talks on guard James Harden and planned to bring him back to training camp for the start of the season. The Sixers had periodic offseason conversations with the Clippers, and Harden's desired destination has always been the Clippers, but no traction on a deal materialized. Woj with more. Sixers and Harden agreed to seek a trade together after Harden picked up his player option for 2023-2024. That's this upcoming season, of course. But Philadelphia believes it has a championship team with Harden, and they want to find a way to make it work with him this season, sources said. Lastly, Harden has been emphatic in wanting a trade. So the Sixers are setting up an uncomfortable situation to start training camp. Ultimately, Philadelphia wouldn't make a trade that they believed would compromise their title hopes. And we know that Daryl Morey is going to wait this out as long as possible. Even now, he's still not willing to trade James Harden unless he gets equal value back. But James Harden clearly, in making these comments, does not want to return to the Sixers. He's going to hold out. It doesn't appear as though he's going to return to training camp, and we're entering a standoff here. But after those Woj quotes, you're thinking, okay, is James Harden going to actually come back? No, because Sam Amick of The Athletic, with this report over the weekend, after Woj had reported that and saying no matter what signals the Sixers might send when it comes to trade talks, a source close to Harden reiterated that the 10-time All-Star and former MVP no longer wants to play for Philadelphia and has no plans of taking part in training camp. So now we have this. After Woj said that, Sam Amick said that, Harden at an event calling out Daryl Morey. And when you think about what he said, the fact that he said it twice, reiterated it, between two men, this is a pretty serious dig here. And there's obviously emotional underlyings here with this situation because James Harden clearly feels as though he's been lied to and he's been betrayed by the guy who's been his biggest advocate for his entire NBA career, going back to when Daryl Morey traded for James Harden when he was a sixth man with the Oklahoma City Thunder. James Harden becomes an MVP player, one of the best offensive players of all time, especially in this generation. A guy who really put that franchise on the map. Then Daryl Morey reacquired James Harden. So for this relationship to enter this area of turmoil is pretty telling. And here's the quote from James Harden. I'm sure everybody has seen it at this point. Daryl Morey is a liar, James Harden said, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of. Let me say that again. Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of. Now, there's so much to unpack with this. We're only getting started on today's show, but this is our poll question, and it's our pinned comment. So make sure you go on down and get those votes in. Whose side are you on here? Are you on James Harden's side? Are you on Daryl Morey's side? Let me know right now in the comment section. As you venture down there, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're approaching 12,000 subscribers right here on 76ers Now. We have you covered with the year-round Sixers coverage. I woke up, saw this tweet from Shams, and I said, we have to go live. That's the standard here on the program, and that's why you hit that subscribe button, so lock us in. My initial reaction to this, the Sixers can't seem to avoid drama. This has been a dysfunctional organization for a really long time, as we're about to talk about in further detail here. They've been pretty much dysfunctional my entire lifetime. Some successful years with Allen Iverson. Outside of that, though, they can't get out of their own way. This is also classic James Harden here, where he has become, over time, one of the most unlikable superstars in recent memory. And he's always been a polarizing player, because he's kind of changed the way that the game has been officiated, the way that the game is played, because he plays at his own pace. He dictates the offensive style with how he approaches the game. And a lot of people disagree with how he goes about his offensive style of basketball. But there's also no surprise here with James Harden, because this is a player who, when he doesn't get his way, he pouts. This is now his third trade request with this third consecutive team, and this is also a player who's a superstar and a stud, and still at this point in his NBA career, a really good player who just led the NBA in assists, had the best assist-to-turnover ratio in his NBA career, second best three-point percentage, but continues to come up short in big games, and when he comes up short in these big moments, he never takes accountability. But look at the track record here with James Harden. He became one of the most generational superstars that the NBA game has ever seen with the Houston Rockets. But then once things derailed and went awry there, he pouted his way out of Houston. He demanded a trade. He got his wish. He went to the Brooklyn Nets, where he wanted to team up with Kevin Durant as well as Kyrie Irving. Things didn't go well there, so he demanded a trade from the Nets after KD, Harden, and Kyrie barely played together, and he ran into a lot of hamstring issues with Brooklyn. He wanted specifically to go to Philadelphia, the team back up with Daryl Morey, but also have a chance at winning a championship to be Joel Embiid's running mate. And they had some success, James Harden and Joel Embiid, playing with the Sixers, but then He takes less money intentionally to return to Philadelphia last year. He was clearly unhappy as all the reports came out from Woj that he was thinking about leaving the team. He had a couple of good games in the playoff series against Boston in which he won Game 1, won Game 4, but then was a no-show in Games 5, 6, and 7 as he crumbled once again in a big moment as he's done throughout his entire NBA career. And when he doesn't get his way with Philadelphia, he demands a trade out of Philadelphia. That's 3 different stops: Houston, Brooklyn, 76ers, 3 different trade requests. It's almost impossible to make James Harden happy. And the irony here is this: Harden wanted to go back to Houston this offseason. As soon as Houston brought in Ime Udoka to take over for Stephen Silas as that organization's new head coach with that new regime, the Rockets didn't want him any longer. James Harden then canvassed the market across the NBA. There wasn't a single team that was willing to give him the money that he wanted, the years that he wanted, and the contract that he wanted. As soon as James Harden realized that Houston didn't want him and no other team was willing to give him the years and the cash flow that he desired, he opted into his contract with Philadelphia. And this is where player empowerment across the NBA becomes a little bit of an issue. Because now James Harden opted into his deal. He's due $35.5 million, and now he's demanding a trade, calling Daryl Morey a liar and saying, I never want to return to the Sixers or a team that Daryl Morey is in charge of ever again. There's also more irony here because Daryl Morey, for so long, even to a fault, has been overly loyal to Harden. He's been his biggest supporter. Traded for him while running basketball operations with Houston, traded for him again with Philadelphia, brought him back, and the guy that's been his biggest advocate in Daryl Morey, Harden is now severing his ties with him, and it seems as though he no longer wants any type of relationship at all with this biggest fan. And between 2 grown men, this is bold of Harden to do. I see why he's doing this, and I wonder if Damian Lillard is taking notes, make it as ugly as possible so that you can get what you want. But to call another grown man a liar and to say that he never wants to play for him again after everything that Morey's done for him, trading for him twice, making him the highest paid player in the history of the NBA, that tells you all you need to know about Harden being in his feelings. And I think he's overly sensitive. Daryl Morey, though, can't escape blame in this entire situation. Did he pull back on his handshake deal with Harden under the table? Did he say that he was going to sign Harden to a long-term contract extension and then didn't? And that's why Harden is disgruntled? Daryl Morey has also continued to come up short throughout his entire tenure as a basketball executive, whether that be with Houston or with Philadelphia. He talks a big game, and then he doesn't back it up. And both Morey and Harden have consistently underperformed, failed to deliver, and are frankly both overrated in my opinion. Is James Harden a special player? For sure, but he's overrated. Is Daryl Morey a good executive? Yes, but he's overrated. He hasn't really done all that much in Philadelphia as far as success because this is an organization that has not made it past the second round of the playoffs since 2001, yet they have one of the highest payrolls across the NBA. Now let's segue to this. Where do the Philadelphia 76ers go from here? The season is 2 months away. Joel Embiid has said he wants to come into this year in the best shape of his life. He wants to prove that he can get this Sixers team over the hump and pass the second round because he understands the pressure that comes along with him coming up short in the playoffs. At least he's being somewhat accountable, whereas James Harden is not. And I wonder what Joel Embiid is thinking here. He wants to come into camp in great shape. Now he's dealing with this. And if the Sixers go into this season with another Ben Simmons-like situation, in which a point guard either doesn't want to report, is disgruntled, has bad body language, and this leads to a lot of drama that is a distraction regardless of how mentally tough you are and no matter how you slice it up. This is going to be a black cloud over this organization. And it's unfortunate, right? Because Philadelphia hired Nick Nurse, a hire that I advocated for, a hire that I wanted to see happen. They finally made a good move at head coach, and now they're dealing with this. This is peak Philadelphia here. John Clark with this as well. I'm told the Sixers never had an agreement and never made an offer to James Harden or exchanged proposals with James Harden and his reps heading into this year's free agency. The whole Sixers plan here, and this is where this becomes problematic as well, was to open up cap space for next year. Harden expiring contract at $35.5 million. Tobias Harris expiring contract at nearly $40 million. That's a lot of cash flow to open up. $70 to $80 million for Philadelphia to go all in on trying to team Joel Embiid up and Tyrese Maxey with the superstar next summer. But when other players across the NBA seeing Harden this unhappy, calling him a liar because clearly Daryl Morey did something to bother him, will any superstar want to come to Philadelphia now? I think there's a chance it could happen because obviously players want to play with Maxey, who has that vivacious personality, and it's contagious. I love his energy. I love his play. I think that he could become a superstar in this league. And Joel Embiid is 29 years old, coming off an MVP season. But if Daryl Morey is an executive that a lot of people don't mesh with, and they don't F with, to put it lightly, are a lot of superstars going to think about coming to Philadelphia? That's a little bit of a problem, especially given the track record of this organization and the pressure that comes from the fan base, but also the media as well. And you look at that Sixers track record of dysfunction, this has been happening for a long time. And I said a little bit earlier, really my entire lifetime, this has been a dysfunctional organization that always seems to step in shit, and they can't avoid it. They had a couple of great years with Allen Iverson, but really, they made it to the finals in 2001. Outside of that, they were a pretty mediocre team that could never find a superstar for AI. A washed Chris Webber, a washed Derek Coleman, Dikembe Mutombo past his prime, Larry Hughes over Paul Pierce. The list goes on and on and on. But you look at this here. In 2013, they traded all-star point guard Drew Holiday in order to tank. And that started and kick-started the Sam Hinkie process. In 2014, they drafted 2 players who didn't play for Philadelphia. In 2015, they drafted a 3rd straight center, Joel Embiid, Nerlens Noel, Jahlil Okafor. In 2016, they hired the advisor's son from Jerry Colangelo to Brian Colangelo to run the team. And a lot of that pressure to hire Jerry Colangelo, who turned around Team USA, did some solid things with the Phoenix Suns. That was pressure from Adam Silver, which I disagreed with. I wish Sam Hinkie would have been able to see this through. But then in 2017, Philadelphia trades up with Boston, trading away a first-round pick, and they drafted Markelle Fultz over Jason Tatum. And Markelle Fultz, who was the consensus #1 player in that draft, all of a sudden lost his ability to shoot. He lost his mental confidence. And then the Sixers had to trade him away for a bag of peanuts. In 2018, Brian Colangelo, with a burner account on Twitter, was caught trashing Joel Embiid. He was then fired. In 2019, the Sixers traded for Jimmy Butler. That move worked. Joel Embiid was happy. He finally had his running mate and his co-star. Then in 2020, Philadelphia fires their head coach in Brett Brown. They hire a new head coach, and then they hired a general manager. That is a backwards process here that no quality business would take that path. Usually you hire a general manager so that he can hire his guy at head coach. So these recent moves with Colangelo trading away Jimmy Butler, and then the whole Elton Brand giving that contract to Tobias Harris, they do the backwards process here in 2021. Ben Simmons demands a trade. In 2022, Philadelphia is investigated for tampering because they brought in players to appease James Harden, who no longer wants to be here. And now you fast forward in 2023, and you're looking at another star point guard, perennial all-star in James Harden, who's demanding a trade right now. This is very familiar territory for Philadelphia. This really is the Ben Simmons situation all over again. Ben Simmons becomes unhappy, he demands a trade. James Harden is unhappy, he demands a trade. Now, Ben Simmons did report to training camp a couple of years ago. He stopped trying. He didn't give a shit. So Doc Rivers sent him home. And now, James Harden, is he going to return to training camp? And if he does, you can bring out the fat suit jokes once again, because he might clearly try to come into camp overweight, out of shape, so that he can force the trade once again. And Harden's plan here is clearly to make this as messy as possible, just so that he can get what he wants, and that's to play with the Los Angeles Clippers. But you know Daryl Morey is not going to give in. Mark Stein with this. We appear to be headed for quite a standoff since league sources say that the Sixers remain determined to trade Harden only if they find a deal that keeps them in the title mix. Here's the problem with Harden, though. Daryl Morey wants a lot back for a guy who had a pretty solid season last year, but James Harden is a declining asset, and he doesn't have a lot of value out there. No teams wanted to give him a multi-year deal worth a max contract, and now there are very few teams who actually want to trade for James Harden, and he's not even the best trade asset out there. Damian Lillard is. And then you talk about the player. Harden is clearly declining. In 2019-2020, his last full season with Houston, he was really good. Led the NBA in scoring. 34 points per game, 7.5 assists, 6.5 rebounds, 35.5% from three. It is pretty notable here that when Harden came into camp out of shape and looked to be overweight at the start of the year, that's when his numbers declined. 24.5 points per game, still a really good distributor at nearly 11 assists per, 8 rebounds, 36.5% from three. His tenure with the Brooklyn Nets does not last long. He gets traded to the 76ers. Those hamstring issues continue, and the numbers continue to plummet. 22 points per game, 10 rebounds, under 8 or 10 assists, under 8 rebounds, and 33% from three. He was in a little bit better shape this past year, led the NBA in assists. His three-point numbers went up, second best mark of his career, 38.5%. And yes, you have to contribute the decline in numbers to the fact that he's played alongside some really good players. So he hasn't been asked to be the scorer that he was with Houston. And in playing with KD, Kyrie, and Joel Embiid, your scoring numbers are going to go down. But there's also analytics that point to James Harden declining as an athlete too, because his explosion is starting to go away. And other teams are taking note of this. Harden averaged 13.5 drives to the basket per game this past year. That is 10 fewer than he did 5 years ago. So he doesn't have that explosiveness or the finishing ability around the rim. He scored fewer points off those drives than he had since 2013-2014. A career low, 25% of his shot attempts came at the rim. Second Spectrum tracks a stat called blow-by rate, a measurement of how often a ball handler dusts his defender off the dribble. In his last full year in Houston, Harden blew by his defender 10.1 times per 100 drives. Last year in Philly, that rate was down to 3.7 per 100 drives. That is pretty telling, and it goes to show you that he is a declining player who can't finish around the rim as well as he did, can't blow by defenders like he used to, and some of that athleticism is starting to go by the wayside here. Now let's round out today's segment with this. James Harden is not a real one. But if you are a real one, let's do a real one roll call and give me a real one down below in the comment section. All right, who's the real one? I see Michael Thomas, Phil, Dark Armies, all in the chat. We did have a super chat come in from a fellow real one in LFX who continues to support the show here. Are you a real one? Give me a real one right now. Martian Lynch, type in real one. Chance Watson is in the house. Ashton also is here, or Ashen, I should say. J2 Real, certainly a real one. Mind My Business, Ron, real one. Appreciate you, Brody, as well. Live show early on a Monday. A lot of people are dusting off those Monday cobwebs, but we're still live here on the show. Kevin Bueno, real one. The Embeard, real uno. I like that too. Here's that super chat that came in from Lion Fighter. I'm really losing faith with this organization. I feel Elton Brand is unqualified and Daryl Morey is losing his marbles. Yeah, Elton Brand is certainly unqualified. If he had to run basketball or operations for this organization, I would not have a lot of confidence in him. And Daryl Morey, I think he's pretty overrated as a basketball executive. Is he losing his marbles? I don't think so. He's really trying to use his leverage with this negotiating tactic. But when you talk about leverage, James Harden, for the reasons that I literally just got done talking about, is a declining player, a declining asset. If he doesn't play this year and then he hits free agency again, there is no team out there that's going to give him a multi-year deal and or a deal that pays him what he's making this year of $35.5 million. There's just no team that's going to do that with the track record and then the analytics showing that he's a declining player. If you want to support the show, please make sure you hit that thumbs up icon, like the video, and comment often. You can also share this video on social media. Hit that subscribe button here on 76ers Now, and of course, send in a super chat as well, like our boy LFX. Jack, how many Harden questions do we have in? Any? We have a few. So if you want to join the show, and if you want to get featured here on the program, please use hashtag Harden or Super Chat to get on Philadelphia 76ers Now. And Jack will pull some regular comments as well. But if you want to get featured on the show, what I want to do here is a Sixers fans react to this type of segment where we relay your comments or your questions here on the show. I react to them as well, and then we can really just open up the floor to chop it up. Treat the comment section like a Sports Talk Radio call-in line. I'm sure the airwaves at 94 WIP are popping off right now. Let's get it popping here on 76ers Now. So use the hashtag Harden to get featured here on the show, and we'll relay your comments as well as your questions here on the show. Let me take a sip of water, and then we'll get to our second segment. Also, make sure you continue to hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. We're at 57 likes. Let's shoot for 100 here. Hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. All right, up next, 76ers fans react to all of this. Let's talk about it, man. There's certainly a lot to discuss, so let's get into it right now. Coming up on today's Philadelphia 76ers Now, Sixers fans react to James Harden calling Daryl Morey a liar and saying he doesn't want to play for Morey or the 76ers again. Now, in case you missed it, I'm sure you saw it, but for those of you who did not, this is what James Harden had to say at an event in China when he was taking some questions from audience members. He said, quote, "Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of. Let me say that again. Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he is a part of." So, continued drama with this basketball team, which has been ongoing for my entire lifetime, 31 years of existence, and continued drama with James Harden, who continues to pout his way and demand trades out of 3 consecutive organizations: the Houston Rockets, the Brooklyn Nets, and the Philadelphia 76ers. That paired with the fact that he's a declining player with diminishing athleticism, and he needs to increase his value as much as possible. He has a player option that he opted into here of $35.5 million. If he doesn't play this year, there are going to be legal ramifications, I would imagine. And there's no team out there, as James Harden right now is 33 years old, that's going to give him a multi-year deal worth the money that he feels as though he deserves as a 10-time All-Star. So let's open up the floor here and take some of your questions, but also your comments, because I'm sure a lot of you are just fed up with this team and James Harden as an individual. Lion Fighter getting us started here with a 76 Super Chat. $7.60. You're a real one, my guy. I'm really losing faith with this organization. I feel Elton Brand is unqualified, and Daryl Morey is losing his marbles. I think a lot of people out there can relate, and I agree. I'm losing faith in this team, and I wake up on a Monday after I was live for 9 hours the last couple of days doing some live coverage of the NFL preseason, and I'm like, man, I'm trying to get a breather to recover here, and James Harden says this all the way out in China. Shams Charania tweets it out. And the drama, it seems as though it just never stops with this team. And it's unfortunate, right? Because they make a great move at head coach with Nick Nurse. And I'm thinking that the Sixers are going to get on the right track. But then James Harden goes about this offseason in this manner, and the Sixers decide to not trade him away. I think they have to trade him away in order to just get rid of this dark cloud that is hovering over this organization. And if they go into training camp with this matter not resolved, it's not going to be good. It is going to be a distraction. As for Elton Brand, he's clearly unqualified with the moves that he made. He signed Tobias Harris to a deal that right now is paying him about $40 million. He's the one who hired Doc Rivers, made some other roster moves. And for Daryl, he continues to be one of the most overrated executives in all of professional sports. Ashen with this man is beyond unreasonable, but he was never going to help us win. He doesn't care about the game enough. Maxey is the future, and the quicker Harden is gone. So let's break this down section by section here. James Harden has always been unreasonable. My issue with him is that he's never taken accountability. My problem with James Harden as a player, to get to that second part of him never helping Philadelphia win, I don't believe that his style of offensive basketball is conducive to winning in the playoffs because it's really never worked. Outside of 2018, if Chris Paul didn't get hurt, maybe the Rockets win that NBA championship, and we look at Harden and Morey as different individuals, right? Because if they won that title when they should have beaten the Golden State Warriors, it could have been different. They could have had a good opportunity there to beat a bad LeBron James Cleveland Cavaliers team. But when you milk the shot clock and when the ball dies on the offensive end of the floor because you dribble for 20 seconds of that shot clock, and then if you can't create for yourself, you dish it out to somebody who has to chuck up a three, or you're trying to dictate offensive play by drawing a foul, and you don't get those fouls in the postseason because physicality flies. It's just not a winning style of basketball. We've seen that happen with Philadelphia. Now, I didn't love James Harden as a player then. I've never really liked him as a player because of the reasons that I talked about. But it was a win to trade away Ben Simmons, who literally was not playing, for Harden, who did play and did help you reach the second round of the playoffs, and against Boston had 2 great games. Outside of that, pretty much a no-show. As for Tyrese Maxey, I do believe he's the future. The question then becomes, can Tyrese Maxey be a co-star next to Joel Embiid? And at this point, do you trade James Harden away just to get rid of this drama, just to escape the depths of dysfunction? And do you bring in role players to surround Maxey and Joel Embiid to try to win that championship? Because you have to make Joel Embiid happy at some point. Because if you don't, he could be the next superstar player who demands a trade. Marshawn Lynch, always been a constant supporter of what we do here on the show. I don't think I've ever seen an organization who had the world of the NBA in their palm of their hands just push every single wrong button like the Sixers have over the last decade. Can we take a look at what has happened, Jack, with the Sixers over the last decade? Because this is problematic, and it literally covers the last decade. Derek Bodner doing a good job of kind of outlining some of this, and then I added some of my own notes here. In 2013, this was the start of the process when the Sixers traded Drew Holiday, an all-star, to tank. In 2014, they drafted 2 players who did not play. In 2015, Philadelphia drafted a 3rd straight center, Nerlens Noel, Joel Embiid, Jahlil Okafor. In 2016, they hired Brian Colangelo because Adam Silver pressured the Sixers organization into parting ways with Sam Hinkie. In 2017, Markelle Fultz was the number 1 player in that draft class, in my opinion. What he was at Washington, great player. But then, mysteriously, he couldn't shoot the basketball any longer. He had the yips. There was a hitch in his jump shot, and the Sixers traded him away for James Ennis. Think about that. James Ennis traded away from a number 1 pick only in 2017, and they traded with Boston and passed up on Jason Tatum for that. How about the trade of Zaire Smith? They traded for Zaire Smith by trading away Mikal Bridges. Can you imagine if they had Mikal Bridges? That trade sucked. In 2018, Colangelo is caught trashing Joel Embiid on Twitter with burner accounts. What? In 2019, they traded away Jimmy Butler and they brought in Josh Richardson. That didn't work. In 2020, this was a backwards process of firing their head coach, hiring a head coach, then hiring a general manager. Oftentimes, you want the general manager to hire his guy, and then a couple of years later, it's Daryl Morey who's firing Doc Rivers. In 2021, Ben Simmons demanded a trade. In 2022, the Sixers are investigated for tampering because they wanted to bring in players that James Harden wanted to play with, and Daniel House and PJ Tucker. And in 2023, it's now James Harden demanding a trade. So whose side are you on with this entire situation here? Is it Harden? Is it Daryl Morey? Let me know down in the comment section. This really is unbelievable, but it's actually believable because of the track record with Philadelphia and then the track record with James Harden here. Mind my business, Ron. Harden isn't wrong, but he's going about airing and addressing his grievances the wrong way. This is a byproduct, though, I believe, and you make some good points, Ron. This is a byproduct of the NBA allowing players to have too much power, where they sign these long-term extensions, and then they secure the bag, and they know I'm set with my financials, right? I have my bag. I'm going to be sitting pretty for generations to come with me and my family. But then if it doesn't work out, they demand a trade, and they refuse to go to training camp when they sign the deals, and they should be honoring their contracts to a certain degree. And for James Harden here, Q&A in China, he knows there's cameras out. Shams Charania tweets it out. And he calls Daryl Morey, his biggest fan for his entire career, the guy who's traded for him twice, who supported him almost to a fault. He calls him a liar and says he never wants to play for him again. It's unprofessional for sure, but that's what James Harden has become over time. Kevo Bueno, I'm with Maxey. Harden could kick rocks. Harden wants a max deal. He's not worth it. That's why Harden opted into his desk, because he wasn't getting a max deal for any team. You meant deal, I imagine. And that's exactly what's so ironic about this. James Harden wanted to go back to Houston. Houston didn't want him. And he's like, oh shit, I'll get paid by another team. I'll get a multi-year deal. I'll make a lot of money. Oh shit, no team's willing to pay me now. I have to opt into my deal. Otherwise, I'm not going to get a deal that I think I'm worth. And I'm going to get that guaranteed $35.5 million. I'm going to opt in. And again, this is the problem with the current construct of the NBA, where he opts in. He's like, I'm getting $35.5 million, but you know what? I'm not playing for a liar again. I'm not playing for Philadelphia. I'm demanding a trade. So for James Harden, the lack of accountability, how he goes about this, pouting, adding weight, not being in shape, which then leads to a hamstring injury and a decline in production, him secretly letting it be known that he was unhappy last year as the Sixers are trying to chase a championship with the MVP of the league. I don't agree how he's gone about it either. We have you covered with year-round Sixers coverage. Please make sure you hit that subscribe button here on 76ers Now. We're approaching 12,000 subscribers. We went live immediately when we saw this situation unfolding. Hit that sub button here. Martian Lynch, can Joel Embiid ask out already? I hate a slow-moving train wreck. It feels as though this is a slow-moving train wreck, right? Where it almost seems inevitable that this year might be a disaster. It's unfortunate because you kind of feel like the Sixers season might be over before it's even started. I will say, if Daryl Morey does trade away Harden and the Sixers bring back some quality pieces, that'll get the fans engaged and excited once again, because at least we know we have Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. And we have a better coach in Nick Nurse as compared to Glenn Rivers, right? But I think that Daryl Morey is going to drag this out, and it's going to be a standoff just like it was for Ben Simmons, which Sixers players and Doc Rivers admitted at the time. Glenn Rivers, I keep saying Doc, fully admitted that that was a distraction. And how can it not be? We're talking about humans here. The human nature element of this is real. So Embiid, if this season ends up being a disaster, it wouldn't surprise me, and I've continued to say this, if he demands a trade next offseason, and then what happens for Philadelphia? They signed Tyrese Maxey to a contract extension, and they have to rebuild once again. And once again, we're talking about a team that can't escape the second round. We could go to that Michael Thomas one. I'm really not on either side. That's cool, too. Morey should not have traded for Harden. Harden is not even close to the player he thinks he is. He is not great. He's a good player. That's it. Daryl Morey did say that the Sixers wanted to trade for Tyrese Halliburton, and then the Kings backed out of that deal. That would have been the better deal. But there's always pressure when you have Embiid, when you have a high payroll, to try to maximize that current title window and bring in another star. And you traded away, again, a player who was not playing in Ben Simmons, who, him and his career, I mean, it's gone off the deep end. Ben Simmons can't even play anymore. He looks to be mentally rattled. So for a guy who had no value at all, who wasn't even playing, you got back James Harden, who 2 years ago wasn't great. This past year was pretty solid. Led the NBA in assists, career best assist-to-turnover ratio, second best three-point mark of his career. It was a win with that trade, but now it's ended up being a disaster. And again, this is where Daryl Morey's relationship with James Harden and all of that has kind of come at a fault. And yes, you're right. He's a good player. He's not a great player who's making $35.5 million. Merquan Wilson is going to be up next year on 76ers Now as Sixers fans continue to react to all of this. Isn't it a violation of a player's contract to trash your organization publicly? He should be fined and stripped of his contract and forced to sit out the season. I don't know if forced to sit out the season, but I wouldn't mind if he's fined and stripped of his contract, because at some point when you're running a business, like Adam Silver is running the NBA, at some point you can't allow players to have this amount of power. You can't allow them to strong-arm organizations into making a deal. And this isn't great for the NBA because the Sixers are the fourth largest media market out there. They have a nationwide and worldwide fan base. Since 2020, they're top 3 in wins. They have the reigning MVP. And while they've made some bad moves and they've misfired and they've shot themselves in their own foot, they're a major brand in the NBA. So this isn't a good look for Philadelphia. It's not a good look for James Harden. It's not a good look for Daryl Morey. It's not a good look for the NBA either. And the player empowerment era continues to be a problem across the NBA, and Adam Silver is to blame because he is enabled and he has allowed all of this to transpire. Now, a lot of people are saying in the chat, James Harden is a good player, not great player. He's a top blank player in the NBA. Where does he fall? Let me know down in the comment section here. Old school DA, Morey brought in Harden to be the Robin to Embiid's Batman. Harden wants to get paid like Batman. It wasn't only Harden that didn't show up for the postseason. Be honest, Harden wants to go. Okay. Joel Embiid for sure has to be better in some of these big moments. And I think that's why Harden is feeling dissatisfied and he's disgruntled. But also at the same time, I think that Joel Embiid is also feeling some pressure of coming up short. You know, he wins MVP. It probably should have gone to Nikola Jokic. I had advocated for Embiid to win MVP, but we saw what Jokic did in the playoffs, and Embiid has never been able to go on a playoff run like that. And Embiid saw Jokic play that way and win a title, and now he's like, I can't even get my team out of the second round. I continue to be injured. I continue to be out of shape because of some of those injuries and because of my lack of preparedness. I continue to not play well in some big games. I thought it was ugly for Joel Embiid to basically be a no-show in Game 7 against Boston. He gave up. He's a little bit mentally soft. He did say he wants to come into this season in the best shape of his life to lift this organization. So he's clearly feeling the pressure, and he knows he's come up short. At least he's taken some accountability. James Harden has never. Merquan Wilson with the $2 super chat. It's a first-time super chat. 2 claps for Merquan. We appreciate you, brother. Harden void his contract. I'm interested to see once again what the legal situation is going to be here from the Sixers and the NBA if this continues. Because remember, Philadelphia, they withheld Ben Simmons' contract, and then they came to a solution. We'll see what happens on this front. Appreciate everybody for watching our Sixers fan react show today, and appreciate everybody for being a part of it. Make sure you subscribe for year-round Sixers content. Dark Armies, look, James Harden has freedom of speech, and he has a point, though, but look at Morey. He's just telling a horrible story about James Harden. What story is he telling, though? Yeah, I mean, I don't know what story he's telling about James Harden. You know, this is on Harden for never taking accountability and pouting his way. At some point, you are who you are, right? At some point, you are who you are. James Harden is who he is. Third team, third trade request. At some point, you have to look yourself in the mirror, right? James Harden has to look himself in the mirror. Another reminder, please subscribe to the show. We're approaching 12,000 subscribers, and I'm going to look at the figures here to see how many new subscribers we've been able to pick up today. We've been able to pick up a lot more subscribers here on the live show, so continue to hit that sub button. We certainly appreciate that and all of the support here on 76ers Now. Be sure to subscribe. Let's do this. We're going to put up a 2-minute shot clock here. If anybody sends in a super chat within 2 minutes, we'll continue to stay live and reset the clock for as long as super chats come in. If not, we're going to sign off and call it a day. So if you want us to stay live, if you want your comments featured on the show, send in a super chat. If not, we'll call it a day, and we appreciate your support. Dark Armies, you're saying all of those sentences don't make sense? Okay. Phil W. Embiid's a headache. He blames his teammates. Yeah, but like Embiid at some point needs help too. Embiid needs James Harden to not go in the witness protection program for games 5, 6, and 7. Joel Embiid wasn't the one who signed Tobias Harris to that deal. He didn't trade away Jimmy Butler. He didn't let go of J.J. Redick when he wanted him back because that DHO game was really good. He wasn't the reason that Ben Simmons was a flake. Trade Harden for Markelle Fultz straight up. I really mean it. We are Penn State 76. Markelle Fultz has actually kind of resurrected his career to a certain degree. That's not equal value. If he can shoot, I honestly wouldn't hate Markelle Fultz. He's a cheaper player. For him to come back would be a decent story. He can at least create. Markelle Fultz's numbers last year were actually pretty solid. Now, he's not obviously never going to be the player that the Sixers envisioned, and I envisioned him becoming when he was selected number 1 in 2017. But this past year, 14 points per game, almost 6 assists. He shot 51% from the floor. Here's the issue. 31% from 3. That is his highest mark of his NBA career. He did take 1.5 three-point attempts, but even that's not good enough. He doesn't do anything to space the floor for you. So that's also a little bit of an issue. Exactly, Martian. I've literally said that about Maxey. He has become what we thought Markelle Fultz was going to be. Fultz is a little bit stockier as far as his body, but Tyrese Maxey has become everything we thought that Markelle Fultz was going to become. There's no doubt. No doubt. All right, continue to let us know. 2-minute shot clock is expired, So we're about to sign off here on the show. Just wanted to go live real quick to chop it up with everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe. If you're just tuning in now, we just put out our video of this James Harden drama with Daryl Morey and Philadelphia. You can go check that out. Make sure you hit that sub button, year-round Sixers content. Thanks again for watching. Hope you all have a great rest of your Monday.